So we've all experienced this. We find a band that we really like, and the first album is so special and unique, and it's like rough around the edges and in your face. And then the band gets a record deal, and their second album is it's just like too polished, man. It's too bland. It's like corporate, man. They sold out. You can see this in any other art too, you know, your favorite YouTuber, all of a sudden you start watching their videos and you're not sure, is this an infomercial or is this like actual content? I'm not sure what I'm watching. Is he putting famous things in the title in hopes that people will click? Then you get people like Vincent van Gogh, man, cutting off their ear just for publicity. You know, like what was up with that guy? Today I'm talking about artistic integrity and being a sellout, because artistic expression and money make a dangerous pair. I think we all agree that artists should be compensated for what they do, right? Because we get something of value out of it. When an artist creates something, either we're at the very least entertained by it, or we can make some deep emotional connection that makes us feel more one with humanity. But on the other hand, clearly, art suffers when it becomes pure commerce. I mean, at that point, it just becomes a rush to the bottom to see who can appeal to the lowest common denominator. I want to use Bill Watterson to demonstrate like the paragon of artistic integrity. So I came up with this little thing here. I haven't drawn a diagram on an index card in a while, so here is one. I call this the art, what do I call it? I call this the Sellout Scale. You have poverty and wealth on one axis and good art and bad art on the other one. So for instance, you have Vincent van Gogh up here. Very poor, but very good work. If I recall correctly, he didn't make any money in his lifetime. Now on the other hand, you have people who amass great wealth producing awful, terrible art, because these are the total sellouts. Insert whoever you want down here. You know I probably have some believers in the audience, so I don't want to put our boy Justin down there, but maybe that's where he goes. Hangman Justin Katz, maybe that's where he goes. It's very difficult for an artist to be in this situation because, I mean, you want to be able to make a living off of what you do, and, you know, let's get honest. If you suddenly had the opportunity to make a bunch of money off of your art, off of your talents, how could you say no? Like, where would you draw the line? Would you say, okay, I'll change a little bit of what I'm doing, but I'm not going any further than this line? Or would you just say, hey, I'll do whatever I need to, because as long as I'm getting the money, then I'm good? Or would you be one of those people who's like, no, if you won't give me money for doing what I'm doing right now, then we're done? That's the other extreme. I guess a sellout is someone who just isn't true to their art for the sake of getting lots of money on a large scale. I think every artist wants success to a degree. They want their work to be presented to an audience who then receives the art. Maybe like the most avant-garde artists, they don't give a care. But I would say the majority of artists want their work to be well received. And in doing so, you kind of have to take into account, what does the audience want to see? And if you want to be successful on a larger scale, you also have to take into account, unfortunately, what is this big corporation that's going to help me sell this stuff? What do they want? There's risk involved for them. They want to have something that they know they can sell. Like if you're a writer and you write a great book, the publisher might say, oh man, this is just so different. We're not sure that we can sell it. We're kind of scared. But if you want to be a successful writer, you have to know how to be true to yourself, but still tailor things a little bit so that people want to buy the book, the publisher wants to sell your book for you. This is where it gets really tricky, and this is where the selling out happens, is at that big corporate level. Like the people who are going to be the most visible in whatever marketplace. The really troubling thing with that, of course, is that it puts us in a situation where the final arbiters of taste are the executives of these companies, the executives of the record labels, the executives at the publishing houses, and so on and so forth. When it comes to music, I think this is most prevalent, but you just hear what's on the radio. And all these companies are intertwined. And so you hear it on the radio, and then you hear it in a TV show, and then you hear it in a Jeep commercial, and then you hear it in a movie, and it's everywhere. And that's because some record executive said, yeah, this is who we pick, we think we can sell this, and by gum, we are going to sell it. Selling out means basically you have to buy into this system of giving the executives something that they can push, that they feel comfortable with. So speaking of selling out, let's take a quick commercial break. This video is brought to you by nobody. Whether you need a custom domain name, a great looking website, or any of the above, we've got you covered over at Nobody. And sign up now and get a 30-day free trial with a free audiobook. And you'll be very happy you did, even though you could sign up without using our link. I don't know why they even do it, but they do it. Thanks very much for sitting through that break. So anyway, all that is to bring us to Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes. Now, if you haven't read Calvin and Hobbes before, I am envious of you because you now get to experience it for the first time. You are able to now get a Calvin and Hobbes book and have your heart and mind opened to this incredible thing. I can't believe you've gone this long without reading Calvin and Hobbes. If you don't know it by the name, you probably know it by the picture. You know, here you've got the kid and his tiger. Comic strips are kind of the same as any other industry, that there are these big corporations in charge. They're called syndicates. And what happens is, if a comic strip artist wants to get into any newspapers, he's got to send it to a syndicate who's, you know, it's kind of like a publisher, I guess. And they sign the artist, they sign the comic strip, and then they distribute it to all these newspapers. Now, of course, once you do that, you kind of sign away some of your rights as an artist, and the corporation, the syndicate, has interests, and the interests are really all about money. They want to make as much money as possible. They want to sell your strip to as many newspapers as possible, and they want to convince you to branch out, to make merchandise, to, you know, if you can do it, get a TV deal. You think about Peanuts, you think about Garfield. Those, in my mind, those are the two most successful comic strips because they just did everything. You can find Garfield on basically any kind of merchandise you want. And Garfield had the TV shows, had the movies. Peanuts is the same thing. You see them everywhere. They're selling insurance, for gosh sake. So in 1985, that's when Calvin and Hobbes started. Bill Watterson got signed to a syndicate. The comic strip became like the most popular comic strip in the country. Everyone loved it because it's Calvin and Hobbes. Of course we loved it. And of course the syndicate wanted more money. They're like, we have the most popular comic strip. We need to milk this baby. And so they were like, yo, Bill Watterson, we want you to let us license your characters and, you know, make t-shirts, make plush toys, put their face on backpacks, put them on lunch boxes. We want to make as much money as we can. And I mean, Hobbes would make a good plush toy, you know? And they said, man, we want to try to get a cartoon, you know, just like Peanuts, do a Christmas special. Maybe we can make a movie, and we're going to make you a millionaire, baby. You're going to love it. I'm the cock of the walk, baby. Bill Watterson said no. He was like, I don't feel comfortable with it because I lose control of my creation at that point. And if you take, like, for instance, with Hobbes, the tiger, he said, if you take him and make him into a plush toy, then all of a sudden you're sort of saying that's what he is. He's a toy. He's not this real, actual tiger in Calvin's imagination. You know, he was like, if I put Calvin and Hobbes like on a mug or something, suddenly I lose control of it. People are seeing my characters out of context, and it's never anything that I intended for them. Bill Watterson also talked about the contempt of overexposure, I think, where when you see stuff everywhere, you start to hate it. Like, if you see Garfield everywhere, you start to hate Garfield. You're like, dude, get that orange cat out of my face. Get that orange cat out of my face. And he's like, I don't want to do that. It's a comic strip. I want my art to be in the comic strip, in the newspaper every day, and then in these books I'm putting out. That's it. You've probably seen, like, on cars, the stupid stickers where it's a picture of Calvin peeing on it, or they have ones where Calvin's praying at a cross. Those are all technically illegal. Those are not official Calvin and Hobbes merchandise. Just wanted to blow the whistle on that one. If you didn't think it was obnoxious enough, it's also breaking a copyright law. I mean, what would you have done in this situation he could have made millions more dollars than he did from just licensing it out, just doing a few. What's the harm in that? But he stood pat. I don't know if I would be able to do that. He was serious. He was a serious artist, man. Here's a couple other things Bill Watterson did that show how he put the art above the money. So in the early days, and you still see this in the comics now. So this is like an older Calvin and Hobbes, and you note there's a big panel here, and then this first panel here, and these two don't really have anything to do with the rest of the strip. They're kind of just priming the pump a little bit. Here's another example. Big one, and then this first one, and then the actual comic kind of starts. This is how Sunday strips are often formatted, so that some papers, if they want, they can cut these two panels, right? And they can scrunch the rest of it down, reformat it, so that they can fit more comics into a page. Because some papers would print this whole thing, some would only print part of it. And Bill Watterson, after a while, he said, I'm not doing that anymore. It's too constraining. This is art, man. I can't be held down anymore. I can't be held to these arbitrary formatting rules because the newspapers want to chop up my frickin' comic strip. Bill was like, this is my art. I want to do it the way I want. I want to have the freedom to use the space in any way I want without some newspaper editor like chopping up my work. You saw the old format. Later on, he just did whatever he wanted. So he does a bunch of smaller boxes there. See, look at this one. There's no way that a newspaper can then come in and chop that up. And the syndicate was like, dude, we don't want to do this because newspapers are going to drop you. They're going to say, hey, look, we need to chop up this thing. We're not going to print it whole. And Bill was like, okay, fine. If they drop it, they drop it. Now, of course, he was coming from the point of being the most popular comic strip, so it was kind of like, well, I'll do what I want. But still, there was this big pressure that in order to keep making money and not lose these newspapers, he needed to do it their way. And he said no. Now, had he been a brand new... See, that's the thing, is that had he not been the most popular, he might not have been able to get away with it. But this is also just talking about what if you all of a sudden were the most popular whatever in a certain field. Would you stick to your guns and put the art above the money, or would you be like, man, I gotta get it while I can? The last thing that I think shows Bill Watterson's dedication to art and how he didn't put money first is he retired the comic strip after just 10 years when it was at its height of popularity. There was no pressure from the outside. Everyone wanted him to keep going, but he said, you know what? I think I've done everything that I can do with this comic strip, and I don't want to just start getting into this formula of making the same joke over and over again. And I've done what I can, and it's time to move on. Because he put the quality of the work above, the money, above the popularity. He knew what he wanted to do with the comic strip. He felt that he had explored as many things as he could with it, and that there was nothing really to do with it without it becoming a chore. And so he ended it. Lots of other comic strips don't do that. They probably told him, look, you don't have to keep writing it. We'll just hire some other people who can copy your style, and you can kind of just, retire and live off that, and we'll keep it going. But of course he wouldn't want to do that. Of course Bill Watterson is going to say, no, F that. Lots of other comic strips did that. Garfield, I believe, it's still running in the papers. When did it debut? Like in the 70s? It's still going strong in the papers. I don't think Jim Davis has drawn Garfield in years. I could be wrong, but I think he has a team of artists because it's a business. It's a moneymaker. There's no art in it anymore. Not that Garfield was ever that artistic. Like Calvin and Hobbes, you need to pick up Calvin and Hobbes, man. If you haven't read Calvin and Hobbes before, I mean, this is art. Garfield was always funny. It was high quality in its day. It wasn't really art. Okay? That's my opinion. It's a Magical World. This is the last collection of Calvin and Hobbes. It got better. As it went along, it only went up. So I'll link this in the description if you want to get it. I think this is definitely the best. I don't know, maybe you want to start earlier so that you can still have good stuff, but it's constantly ramping up, you know what I mean? Because if you start later, then it's not a huge decline, but you know what I'm trying to say? So I think Bill Watterson is like the paragon of putting art above money. I think artists need to look to him as an inspiration for what do you do when you're faced with the prospect of compromise my art but make some more money. And it's not an easy thing. I think about like, what if some company came along and said, hey, we want to sponsor your YouTube channel, but you have to make like 2 minutes of your 10-minute video about our product. What am I going to say? It's definitely a difficult prospect when you're first starting out. When you're established, it's a little easier to say F the BS, but I don't know. It's something to think about. I remember my friend Mike in high school. He wanted to be in a band. He wanted to start a band with me, and he was like, I never want to sell out, man. I just want to play small gigs in people's like apartments forever, and we're going to be like the king of the underground. And I was like, that doesn't sound particularly fun, Mike. I want to sell out, okay? Corporate t-shirts, corporate magazines still suck. Let me know what you think about all that. What would you do if you were faced with making a boatload of money, but you had to compromise your art? Do you have any other instances of people like Bill Watterson who you think are great examples of uncompromising paragons of virtue when it comes to selling out? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Stay cool and attractive.
I don't care what the hipsters say. I'm selling